My name is Jessica Reynolds, 27 years old, and my master's degree graduation day almost fell apart when my entire family chose to attend my sister's baby shower instead. After promising for months they'd be there for my big moment, my mother called the night before to say that my sister Lily's last-minute baby shower was a family priority that couldn't be missed. The betrayal cut deeper than I could admit. My father thought I'd accept it quietly like always, but this time they had gone too far. The consequences were much greater than any of them could possibly imagine. Before I continue my story, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Like and subscribe for more family secrets nobody ever tells. I stood alone in the university auditorium's bathroom, struggling to pin my graduation cap in place. Around me, other graduates took selfies with their families or adjusted their gowns with mothers fussing over every detail. The empty space beside me felt enormous. Need some help with that? Professor Walsh, my thesis advisor, appeared in the mirror behind me. Please, I said, handing her the stubborn bobby pins. My hands won't stop shaking. She secured my cap with expert precision. Nervous about the speech? I nodded, though that was only part of it. As valedictorian of my master's program in biochemistry, I should have been solely focused on the address I'd be giving in 30 minutes. Instead, my mind kept replaying last night's phone call. "Jessica, honey," my mother had said, her voice carrying that sugary tone she used when delivering disappointing news. "There's been a change of plans. Lily's friends decided to throw her a surprise baby shower tomorrow, and you know how important this baby is to the whole family." "My graduation is tomorrow," I'd replied flatly. "I know, sweetie, but this is Lily's first child. Your father and I need to be there, and your brothers are driving in specially. You understand, right? You always do." I didn't understand. Not when I'd reminded them months ago. Not when I'd mailed physical invitations. Not when I'd called last week to confirm. Professor Walsh squeezed my shoulder, bringing me back to the present. "Your family running late?" "They're not coming," I admitted, the words burning my throat. Something more important came up. Her kind eyes flashed with indignation before she controlled her expression. "Well, their loss. The department faculty will be cheering extra loud for you." I forced a smile. "Thanks, that means a lot." After she left, I checked my phone again. Not a single message from any family member. Not Mom, not Dad, not my older brothers Thomas and Kyle, and certainly not Lily, who'd been the golden child since she was born. The university president's voice crackled over the PA system, calling graduates to line up. I tucked my phone away and joined the procession. Walking across that stage should have been the culmination of years of hard work. I'd put myself through college with scholarships and part-time jobs while my siblings had their educations fully funded. I'd worked nights in the lab to complete my thesis on potentially revolutionary cancer treatments. I'd published papers and won departmental awards, achievements that earned brief congratulations at family dinners before conversation inevitably turned to Lily's wedding plans or the baby news. The ceremony passed in a blur. I delivered my speech without stumbling, received my hood, and shook hands with the university president. When my name was called, I heard Professor Walsh and her colleagues cheering as promised. Their support warmed me, but it wasn't the same. Afterward, graduates spilled onto the lawn with their families for photos. I stood awkwardly at the edge, watching parents beam with pride and siblings playfully adjust tassels. Professor Walsh found me again and insisted on taking photos, recruiting other faculty members to join in. "We're proud of you, Jessica," she said, handing my phone back after capturing several shots. "What you've accomplished is extraordinary." "Thank you," I said, genuinely moved by her kindness. "Are you going somewhere to celebrate?" "You should be celebrating." I shook my head. "Just heading home. I have an early shift at the lab tomorrow." She frowned. "You should take the day off. You've earned it." But I needed the distraction. The thought of sitting alone in my apartment while my family celebrated Lily's impending motherhood was unbearable. As people dispersed, I made my way to the administration building to collect my diploma holder. The actual diploma would come in the mail later. The woman at the distribution table checked my name off her list and handed me the leather folder. "Congratulations, Dr. Reynolds," she said with a smile. The title sounded strange. I'd earned it, yet it felt hollow without anyone who truly mattered there to hear it. In my car, I opened the diploma holder, expecting to find only the ceremonial placeholder inside. Instead, there was also a cream-colored envelope that wasn't university stationery. Curious, I turned it over. My name was written in unfamiliar handwriting. Before I could open it, my phone buzzed, then buzzed again, and again. I pulled it from my purse to find 72 missed calls. From my mother, father, brothers, and even Lily. What on earth could possibly be so urgent now? My phone continued to vibrate in my hand as new calls came in. After ignoring several from my mother, I finally answered one from Thomas, my oldest brother. He was usually the most reasonable family member. "Jess, thank God you answered," he said, his voice uncharacteristically frantic. "Where are you?" "Just left graduation," I replied coolly. "You know, the one none of you bothered to attend. Listen, we need to talk to you right away. It's important." "More important than my graduation?" I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. "Jess, this is serious. Have you opened any mail today? Any envelopes?" My eyes darted to the cream envelope in my lap. "Why?" "Don't open anything. Just come to Mom and Dad's house. Now. I'm not driving 2 hours to their house after you all ditched me today. If you want to talk, you can tell me what's going on over the phone." Thomas lowered his voice. "It's about Grandma Reynolds' will. My grandmother had passed away 3 months ago. We'd been close. She was the one who'd encouraged my interest in science, buying me my first microscope when I was 9. She'd left me her collection of botanical books, but the rest of her estate had gone to my father, her only child." "What about it?" I asked. "Just come to the house, Jess. Please." "No," I said firmly. "I'm tired, I'm disappointed, and I'm not in the mood for family drama. Tell me what's going on, or I'm hanging up." He sighed heavily. "Fine. We found out today that Grandma changed her will before she died. She left you her house and most of her money." I nearly dropped the phone. "What?" "We just found out at the reading this morning. The lawyer said she made the changes last year. Dad's furious. He says there must be a mistake. My grandmother's house was a beautiful Victorian in an historic neighborhood, worth at least $1 million. And while I didn't know the details of her finances, I knew she'd lived comfortably after my grandfather's insurance payout and smart investments." "Why would she do that?" I whispered, though part of me knew. "There's a letter explaining everything. The lawyer said she left one for you, too. That's why I'm asking if you've received any mail." My fingers tightened around the envelope in my lap. "I need to go." "Jess, wait." I hung up and stared at the envelope. With trembling fingers, I carefully opened it and unfolded the letter inside. "My dearest Jessica," it began in my grandmother's elegant handwriting. "If you're reading this, I'm no longer with you, and you've completed your master's program as planned. First, let me say how proud I am of you. Your dedication to your education and your passion for science have been inspiring to watch. I always believed you were destined for greatness. I've made some changes to my will that may surprise your family. While tradition would dictate everything go to your father, I've decided to leave you my home and the majority of my estate. This isn't meant to cause pain, but to recognize something I've observed over the years. Your accomplishments have often been overshadowed in your family. Your siblings had their education paid for, while you worked and earned scholarships. Your academic achievements have been treated as expected, rather than celebrated. Even your graduation, which I'm heartbroken to miss, was likely overlooked for some reason or another. I want you to have the freedom to pursue your research without financial constraints. The world needs brilliant minds like yours focused on solving problems, not worrying about rent or student loans. Your grandfather would have agreed with me completely. Remember how he used to call you Doc even when you were little? He knew too. All my love, Grandma Eleanor. Tears streamed down my face as I finished reading. She'd known. Somehow she'd known they wouldn't come to my graduation. She'd seen the pattern I'd tried to ignore for years. My phone rang again, my father this time. I declined the call and started my car. I needed time to process this before facing my family. Their sudden interest in me had nothing to do with pride in my accomplishment, and everything to do with money. As I pulled out of the parking lot, my phone lit up with a text from Lily. "We need to talk about what Grandma did. It's not fair to Dad." I turned my phone off completely and headed toward the freeway. But instead of going to my apartment, I found myself driving toward the coast, toward my grandmother's house. My house now. I needed to see it again, to feel close to the one person who had truly seen me. The sun was setting as I pulled into the driveway of my grandmother's Victorian home. Golden light spilled across the wraparound porch where we'd spent countless summer evenings drinking lemonade and talking about books. The garden was beginning to look a bit wild. No one had tended it since she'd passed. I sat in my car for several minutes, gathering courage. I hadn't been back since the funeral. The key was still on my keyring. Grandma had given it to me years ago so I could visit whenever I needed a quiet place to study during breaks from school. Finally, I walked up the familiar path, climbed the porch steps, and unlocked the front door. The house smelled like her, a mix of lavender, old books, and the lemon polish she used on the antique furniture. I flipped on lights as I moved through the rooms, noticing how everything remained exactly as she'd left it. In the kitchen, I found a bottle of champagne in the refrigerator with a note taped to it. For Jessica's graduation. She'd planned to celebrate with me, even knowing she might not be here. I poured myself a glass and carried it to her study, where floor-to-ceiling bookshelves housed her beloved botanical collection, alongside classics of literature and science texts. On her desk sat framed photos, several of me at various stages of life, including my college graduation. There were fewer pictures of my siblings and parents. Sinking into her leather chair, I sipped the champagne and tried to imagine what my life might look like now. The inheritance would pay off my student loans. I could afford to take a research position without worrying about making rent. I could live in this beautiful house or sell it and buy something closer to the university. The possibilities were dizzying. My phone, which I'd finally turned back on, buzzed with new messages. I ignored them and instead called Professor Walsh. "Jessica, how are you? Did you have a nice evening despite everything?" "Actually, something incredible happened," I said, and found myself telling her everything about the letter and inheritance. "That's remarkable," she said when I finished. "Your grandmother sounds like she was an extraordinary woman." "She was," I agreed. "But now my entire family is furious with me." "For something you had no control over? They think I somehow influenced her decision, or that I should just give everything to my father because that's what family does." Professor Walsh was quiet for a moment. "Jessica, may I speak frankly?" "Of course. Your grandmother recognized your value when your immediate family failed to. She made a deliberate choice to invest in your future because she believed in you. Honoring her wishes isn't selfish. It's respecting her autonomy and judgment." Her words settled something within me. "You're right. And consider this. What would you do with these resources? Continue your research? Perhaps fund a scholarship for other students in your situation?" I hadn't thought that far ahead, but the idea resonated. I could make sure other students don't have to work 3 jobs while studying. Exactly. This inheritance could extend your grandmother's legacy of supporting education far beyond what giving it to your father might accomplish. After we hung up, I wandered through the house again, seeing it with new eyes, my home. In my grandmother's bedroom, I found a stack of photo albums I'd never seen before. The top one was labeled Jessica's Achievements. Inside were newspaper clippings of every academic competition I'd won, programs from science fairs where I'd placed, copies of my published papers, and photos of me receiving awards. Many events my parents had been too busy to attend. She'd documented everything. On the last page was a photo from just 6 months ago, me presenting my research at a conference. I hadn't even known she was there. The caption read, "My brilliant granddaughter will change the world someday." Tears filled my eyes again. But these weren't tears of hurt or anger. For the first time that day, I felt truly celebrated. My phone rang again, My mother this time. After a deep breath, I answered. Jessica Marie Reynolds, we have been worried sick, she exclaimed. Why haven't you been answering our calls? I was at my graduation, I replied calmly. And then I needed some time to think. Your father is beside himself about this will situation. You need to come over so we can discuss this as a family. I'm at Grandma's house now. My house. I corrected myself. This is exactly what we need to talk about. Your grandmother wasn't thinking clearly when she made these changes. Your father is her only child. Everything should have gone to him. Grandma knew exactly what she was doing, Mom. I have a letter explaining her reasons. What reasons could possibly justify cutting your father out of his inheritance? Her voice rose sharply. She didn't cut him out completely, and she wanted to support my research. Research? Jessica, this is family we're talking about. Your sister is having a baby, the first grandchild. That money could help them buy a house, set up a college fund. Like you set up for me? I interrupted. Or paid for my education like you did for Lily, Thomas, and Kyle. Silence fell on the other end of the line. I graduated top of my class today, I continued. I gave the valedictorian speech. And not one member of my family was there because Lily's baby shower was more important. That's not fair, Jessica. You know how much this baby means to everyone. And my accomplishments should have meant something to all of you, too. My mother sighed. We're very proud of you. You know that. Do I? Because it's never felt that way. You've always been so independent, so capable. You never seemed to need our support the way the others did. There it was. The truth I'd always suspected. I'd been punished for my self-sufficiency, overlooked because I didn't demand attention. I'm going to stay here tonight, I said. I'll talk to all of you tomorrow. Jessica? Good night, Mom. I hung up and poured myself another glass of champagne. Tomorrow would be difficult, but tonight, in my grandmother's house, my house, I would celebrate my achievement, even if I celebrated alone. I woke the next morning to sunlight streaming through lace curtains and the distant sound of waves breaking against the shore. For a moment, I was disoriented until I remembered where I was. My grandmother's house, now mine. My phone showed 27 new missed calls and twice as many text messages. I skimmed through them, variations of disbelief, anger, and poorly disguised attempts to make me feel guilty about the inheritance. Only Thomas had sent something approaching supportive. We need to talk, but congrats on graduation. I should have been there. Too little. Too late. I made coffee in my grandmother's kitchen and carried it out to the porch swing. The neighborhood was quiet this early. Just a few dog walkers and joggers passing by. A woman about my mother's age waved from across the street. You must be Jessica, she called, crossing over. Eleanor talked about you constantly. I am, I confirmed, surprised. I'm Margaret, your grandmother's neighbor for 20 years. I was so sorry to miss the funeral. I was visiting my daughter in Australia. Eleanor told me you were finishing your doctorate in biochemistry. Just defended my thesis last month, I said. Congratulations. She was so proud of you. She showed me your published papers, though I confess I didn't understand much beyond the abstracts. Margaret smiled warmly. Will you be staying here now? I'm not sure yet. I just found out yesterday that she left me the house. Of course she did, Margaret said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. She always said you were the one who appreciated this place most. Your father wanted her to sell it years ago and move to one of those retirement communities. This was news to me. He did? Oh, yes. There was quite the argument about it. Eleanor was adamant about staying independent. She said she was saving the house for you because you'd preserve its character. Margaret checked her watch. I should keep walking. My arthritis acts up if I stay still too long. But do let me know if you need anything. Eleanor was a dear friend. After she left, I sat contemplating this new information. Dad had tried to get Grandma to sell the house. That explained some of his anger over the will. My phone rang. Lily this time. I almost declined, then decided I might as well face the music. Hello? Jess, what the hell? She demanded without preamble. Do you have any idea what you've done to Dad? I didn't do anything, Lily. This was Grandma's decision. You must have said something to her. Dad says she was always too soft on you. I gripped my coffee mug tighter. I had no idea about any of this until yesterday. Well, you need to make it right. Dad's talking about contesting the will. On what grounds? Undue influence, maybe. Or diminished capacity. Anger flared hot in my chest. Grandma was sharp as a tack until the end, and you know it. She completed the New York Times crossword the week before she died. It's not right, Jess. Dad is her son. The money and house should go to him, and then eventually to all of us. You're being selfish. I'm being selfish? I laughed incredulously. None of you even showed up to my graduation yesterday. You've all had everything handed to you while I worked my way through school. And I'm the selfish one? Oh, please, not the graduation thing again. It was just a ceremony, Jess. My baby shower was about family, about the next generation. My graduation was about family too. Or it should have been. It's not the same, and you know it. This baby is the future of our family. And my research could help save lives, but that's never mattered to any of you. Lily sighed dramatically. Look, we all know you're the smart one. You don't need to keep proving it. But this inheritance thing is going to tear the family apart if you don't fix it. Fix it? You mean give up what Grandma specifically wanted me to have so Dad won't be angry? So you can have more money for your baby? That's not going to happen. Wow, Lily said after a pause. I never realized how bitter you are. I feel sorry for you, Jess. Really. The call ended, and I sat staring at my phone in disbelief. Bitter? Was that how they saw me? The difficult daughter? The problematic sister who wouldn't fall in line with family expectations? I spent the rest of the morning exploring the house properly, opening drawers and closets, discovering treasures I'd never known existed. In my grandmother's sewing room, I found a quilt she'd been making, patches representing different phases of my life. There was fabric from my high school graduation dress, from the lab coat she'd bought me when I started college, even a scrap from the blouse I'd worn when presenting my first research paper. It was nearly finished, only the binding left to complete. In her office, I discovered a file cabinet full of financial records. Curious about exactly what I'd inherited, I began looking through them. What I found stunned me. My grandmother had been far wealthier than any of us had realized. She'd made shrewd investments over decades, building a portfolio worth millions. And there were insurance policies, properties I hadn't known about, stock certificates. But most surprising was a folder labeled Jessica's Education. Inside were receipts and bank statements showing regular transfers to accounts I didn't recognize. Digging deeper, I discovered the truth. My grandmother had been secretly funding my education all along. The scholarships I'd received, the research grants, even the apartment rental that had mysteriously been half what it should have cost. She'd arranged it all, making it look like I'd earned it independently, so I'd maintain my confidence and work ethic. She'd known my parents wouldn't support me the way they had my siblings, so she'd stepped in quietly, letting me believe I was doing it on my own. I sat back in her chair, overwhelmed. All these years, she'd been my silent benefactor, my guardian angel. And now, even after her death, she was ensuring I could continue my work without obstacles. My phone rang again. It was my father. This time, I felt ready to talk to him. Jessica. My father's voice was tight with barely controlled anger. We need to discuss this situation immediately. Hello to you too, Dad, I replied. Congratulations on becoming a grandfather soon. Don't change the subject. Your mother says you're at the house. I am. You need to come to our house now. The whole family is here. We need to sort this out. I took a deep breath. I'm not coming over today, Dad. I've just graduated. I've discovered my grandmother left me an inheritance I wasn't expecting, and I need time to process everything. This isn't just about you. This affects the entire family. Your grandmother wasn't thinking clearly when she made these changes. Actually, she was thinking perfectly clearly. I found quite a lot of documentation here that shows exactly how deliberate her planning was. There was a momentary silence. What documentation? Financial records, letters. It's all very thorough. Those are private family papers. You have no right. They're in my house, Dad. Grandma left them for me to find. He made a sound of frustration. Jessica Marie, I am your father, and I am telling you to bring those papers to me immediately. The commanding tone that had intimidated me throughout childhood now just sounded desperate. I'm sorry, but no, I'm going to honor Grandma's wishes. You've always been difficult, he said, his voice hardening. Always had to do things your own way. Your mother and I gave you everything. No, you didn't, I interrupted, surprising us both. You paid for Lily, Thomas, and Kyle to go to college. You bought them cars, covered their rent. I worked part-time jobs and took out loans. The only reason I'm not drowning in debt is because Grandma secretly helped me. What are you talking about? She funded scholarships specifically for me. She subsidized my rent. She made sure I could focus on my studies without working 3 jobs. She did what you and Mom should have done. Another long silence. That's ridiculous. Mom didn't have that kind of money. She did, Dad. She had millions. She just chose not to tell you about it because she knew what you'd do with it. That's a lie, he snapped. She would never hide something like that from me. I was her son. And I'm your daughter, but that didn't stop you from missing my graduation for a baby shower. That's completely different. Lily needed us. I've needed you too. My whole life I've needed my parents to show up for me, to care about my achievements, to be proud of me. But nothing I do is ever enough. We are proud of you, he said automatically. We've always been proud. Empty words, Dad. You've never shown it. Actions matter more than words, and your actions have always made it clear that I'm not a priority. I could hear him breathing heavily, the way he did when he was trying not to lose his temper completely. You know what, Jessica? Keep the damn house. Keep the money. But don't expect to remain part of this family if you do. The threat hung between us, and I was surprised to find it didn't terrify me as it once would have. If being part of the family means giving up what Grandma wanted for me, then maybe I don't want to be part of it anymore, I said quietly. He hung up without another word. I sat in the gathering darkness of my grandmother's study, feeling strangely calm. The threat of family excommunication should have devastated me. Instead, I felt something close to relief. The constant need for validation, the perpetual disappointment. Maybe I could finally let it all go. My phone lit up with a text from Thomas. Dad's furious. What did you say to him? I typed back, the truth. He's talking about cutting you off completely. This is serious, Jess. I've been taking care of myself for years. Nothing will change. A moment later, he called. I answered warily. Jess, you need to fix this, he said without greeting. Dad's going nuclear. I'm not giving up the inheritance, Thomas. Why not? It's just money and a house. Is it worth destroying the family over? The family was already broken. This just exposed the cracks. He sighed. Look, I know we haven't always been there for you the way we should have been. I'm sorry about missing your graduation, I really am. But this is different. This is millions of dollars that should have been distributed fairly. According to who? It was Grandma's money to do with as she pleased. She wanted me to have it to support my research. Research? He scoffed. Dad says you're working on some cancer thing that'll probably never amount to anything. The dismissal stung, but it wasn't surprising. My research has already shown promising results. 2 pharmaceutical companies have expressed interest in developing it further. Really? For the first time, there was a note of genuine surprise in his voice. Yes, really. Not that anyone in the family ever asked. Huh. He was quiet for a moment. I didn't know that. There's a lot you don't know about me, Thomas. None of you ever bothered to find out. Another long pause. I guess that's fair. But Jess, you can't just take all of Grandma's money. At least share some of it. Why? So Lily can buy a bigger house? So Kyle can pay off his gambling debts? So Dad can finally get that boat he's always wanted? How did you know about Kyle's debts? Grandma kept meticulous records. She knew everything that was going on in this family. Thomas sounded uncomfortable now. Look, we all have our issues. That doesn't mean you should get everything. I earned it, Thomas. Not by manipulating Grandma, but by being the only one who actually shared her values. The only one who visited her regularly without wanting something. The only one who cared about her as a person, not just as a checkbook. That's not fair, isn't it? When was the last time you visited her just to spend time with her, not to borrow money or ask for something, but just to be with her? His silence was answer enough. I have to go, I said. I need to get back to my apartment and pack some things if I'm going to stay here. Jess, wait. Don't leave things like this. Come over tomorrow. Let's all talk. I'll think about it, I conceded, though I had no intention of subjecting myself to a family ambush. After hanging up, I realized I was hungry. I hadn't eaten since before graduation yesterday. The kitchen held little food, just some basics and non-perishables. So I decided to walk to the small cafe a few blocks away that my grandmother and I had frequented. The evening air was cool and salty from the nearby ocean. The neighborhood was peaceful, with historic homes similar to my grandmother's lining the streets. For the first time, I allowed myself to imagine living here permanently. Mornings on the porch with coffee, evenings in the garden, weekends exploring the quaint downtown area. At the cafe, the owner recognized me immediately. Jessica, I was wondering when you'd come by. Your grandmother was one of our favorites. Mine too, I said with a sad smile. She talked about you all the time, her brilliant granddaughter who was going to cure cancer someday. She even showed us your picture in the university paper. As I ate my sandwich, I scrolled through my emails and found one from Professor Walsh sent that morning. Jessica, I've been thinking about your situation. If you're serious about continuing your research, I have connections at Westlake Pharmaceuticals. They're looking for innovative cancer treatments to develop. Let me know if you'd like an introduction. Congratulations again on your graduation and inheritance. Both were well-deserved. With sudden clarity, I knew what I wanted to do. My grandmother had given me freedom. Freedom to pursue my research without financial constraints. Freedom to make choices based on scientific merit rather than monetary necessity. I would honor her gift by using it exactly as she'd intended. The next morning, I drove back to my apartment to collect some clothes and necessities. My roommate, Alicia, was surprised to see me packing a suitcase. Moving out already? She asked, leaning against my doorframe. I thought you had 2 more months on the lease. I do, I said, folding a sweater. But I've inherited my grandmother's house. I'm going to stay there while I figure things out. Her eyes widened. That gorgeous Victorian by the beach? Seriously? I nodded, still not quite believing it myself. Wow, that's amazing, Jess. But wait, why didn't you mention this yesterday at graduation? I didn't know until after everyone left. Found out at the same time I discovered my family skipped my graduation for my sister's baby shower. Alicia winced. That's cold, even for them. She'd witnessed enough of my family dynamics over the past 2 years to understand the pattern. So the house is really yours now? Like, all yours? The house and quite a bit more. I still felt uncomfortable discussing the full extent of my inheritance. Holy shit, she whispered. No wonder you've been ignoring your phone. I heard it buzzing all night. Yeah, my family isn't exactly thrilled. I zipped up the suitcase. My father's threatening to cut me off completely if I don't give everything to him. Alicia snorted. Cut you off from what? The family that doesn't show up for your graduation? I smiled gratefully at her. At least someone understood. Exactly. And I think I'm finally okay with that possibility. I sat on the edge of my bed. My whole life, I've been trying to earn their approval, their attention. Nothing was ever enough. Because the problem was never you, Alicia said firmly. Some families just can't see past their own expectations. I know that now. I stood and grabbed my laptop bag. I've got a meeting with Professor Walsh this afternoon to discuss my research. I'll be back for the rest of my things later this week. Hey, she called as I headed for the door. I'm really proud of you. For the graduation, the inheritance, all of it. You deserve good things, Jess. Her words stayed with me as I drove to campus. You deserve good things. Such a simple statement, Yet it contradicted everything my family had ever made me feel. That my achievements were expected, not exceptional. That my needs were secondary to everyone else's. That my worth was measured by my usefulness to the family rather than my own accomplishments. Professor Walsh was waiting in her office when I arrived. "Jessica, how are you holding up?" "Better than expected," I admitted, settling into the chair across from her desk. "I've had some time to process everything." "And your family?" "Still upset. My father's threatening to disown me if I don't give up the inheritance." She shook her head. "Ultimatums rarely bring out the best in family relationships." "I think some relationships aren't worth saving," I said, surprising myself with the conviction in my voice. Professor Walsh studied me for a moment. "That's a difficult conclusion to reach, but sometimes a necessary one. Have you thought about what you want to do with your research?" "I have," I said. "I'd like to pursue that introduction to Westlake Pharmaceuticals, if the offer still stands. But I'm also considering establishing a foundation, using part of my inheritance to fund scholarships for women in STEM who lack family support." Her eyes lit up. "That's an excellent idea. Creating opportunities for others facing similar challenges. My grandmother helped me secretly. I'd like to help others openly." We spent the next hour discussing possibilities, both for my research and the foundation concept. For the first time since graduation, I felt truly excited about the future. As I was leaving, Professor Walsh said, "You know, Jessica, family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about who believes in you, who supports your dreams. Your grandmother understood that." "I'm beginning to understand it too," I replied. When I returned to my grandmother's house, my house, I found a sleek black car parked in the driveway. Kyle, my younger brother, was sitting on the porch steps, looking up as I pulled in. My heart sank. I wasn't ready for another confrontation, especially not with Kyle, who could be the most volatile of my siblings when he felt threatened. "How did you know I'd be here?" I asked, approaching cautiously. He stood, hands in his pockets. "Process of elimination. You weren't at your apartment or the lab? This was the only other place you might be." I unlocked the front door without inviting him in, but he followed anyway, whistling low as he looked around. "Nice place," he said. "Didn't realize how much Grandma had fixed it up." "She loved this house," I replied stiffly. "What do you want, Kyle?" He wandered into the living room, examining the antique furniture and family photos. "Can't a brother visit his sister after her graduation?" "You could have visited me at the actual graduation," I pointed out. He had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "Yeah, about that. I wanted to come, Jess, but you know how Mom gets when she decides something is a family priority. Funny how my events are never the priority." Kyle shrugged. "You've always been the independent one. Never seemed to need any of us." The same excuse my mother had used. I was tired of being punished for my self-sufficiency. "Why are you really here?" I asked. "Dad send you to convince me to give up my inheritance?" "Actually, no. I came on my own." He sat on the couch, suddenly serious. "Look, Dad's on the warpath. He's talking to lawyers about contesting the will. Things could get ugly. Let them." Grandma's wishes were clear, and she was of sound mind. Kyle ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture he'd had since childhood. "Here's the thing, Jess. I need money. Badly." I crossed my arms. "The gambling debts?" His head snapped up. "How did you—" "Grandma knew. She kept records." "Shit." He looked away. "It's worse than whatever she knew about. I owe some people. Serious people. They're not patient." "And you thought I'd just hand over part of my inheritance to bail you out? Again?" "Not all of it," he said quickly. "Just enough to clear the debt. Around $200,000. I stared at him incredulously. $200,000? Kyle, that's not just anything. That's a fortune. Compared to what you got, it's nothing. Come on, Jess. I'm in real trouble here." "And whose fault is that? You've been bailed out how many times already? By Mom and Dad? By Grandma when she was alive?" "This is different," he insisted. "These guys don't mess around. I could be hurt, or worse." I studied my brother, trying to determine if he was manipulating me or genuinely frightened. There was real fear in his eyes, but Kyle had always been a convincing actor when he needed something. "I'll make you a deal," I said finally. "I'll pay off your debts, directly to the creditors, not to you. In exchange, you go to Gamblers Anonymous and get into a proper treatment program, and you back me up with Dad about the inheritance." Hope flashed across his face, quickly replaced by wariness. "Back you up how?" "Tell him to drop the idea of contesting the will. Confirm that Grandma was perfectly lucid when she made her decisions. Stand up for me for once." He hesitated, weighing his options. "Dad won't listen to me." "Try anyway. Those are my terms." After a long moment, he nodded. "Fine. It's a deal." I wasn't naive enough to believe Kyle would keep his word, but at least I'd made the offer on my terms. And if he was really in danger, I didn't want that on my conscience. "I'll need the names of your creditors and proof of the debts," I said. "And the treatment program starts immediately." "You sound like Mom," he muttered. "No, Mom would just write you a check and pretend the problem doesn't exist. I actually want you to get better." He looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Surprise, maybe, or a reluctant respect. "You've changed, Jess." "No," I corrected him. "I've just stopped pretending to be who everyone else wanted me to be." After Kyle left, I sat on the porch swing, watching the sunset over the neighborhood. The confrontation had gone better than I'd expected, but I knew it was just the beginning. My father wouldn't give up so easily. My phone buzzed with a text from Thomas. "Dad's found a lawyer. This is getting serious. Please reconsider." I typed back, "There's nothing to reconsider? This was Grandma's decision, not mine. At least come to dinner tomorrow. Mom's upset." I hesitated. Part of me wanted to maintain my distance, but another part recognized that complete estrangement wasn't the answer either. "What time?" 6 p.m. "And Jess? Come alone." The implied warning was clear. This would be an intervention of sorts. I'd be outnumbered and pressured to comply. But now, with the security of my grandmother's legacy behind me, I felt strong enough to face them all. "I'll be there," I replied, then added, "But I'm not changing my mind." I spent the next day exploring my new home more thoroughly and meeting with a financial advisor recommended by Professor Walsh. The full extent of my inheritance was even greater than I'd initially realized. My grandmother had been not just comfortable, but genuinely wealthy, with diverse investments built over decades. "You could live quite comfortably on the investment income alone," the advisor explained, never touching the principal. The idea was dizzying. Financial security had always been a distant dream, something I hoped to achieve eventually through my career. To have it handed to me now, when I was just starting out, felt unreal. "I want to establish a foundation," I told her, "for scholarships and research grants." She nodded approvingly. "Your grandmother mentioned you might want to do that. She left some preliminary paperwork." Of course she had. Grandma had known me better than I knew myself sometimes. By late afternoon, I was feeling more confident about my position as I prepared for dinner with my family. I dressed carefully in a professional navy dress, armor of sorts, and drove to my parents' suburban home with a strange calm. All three of my siblings' cars were already in the driveway. "The gang's all here," I thought wryly. My mother answered the door with a strained smile. "Jessica, you came." She hugged me awkwardly. "You look nice." "Thanks, Mom." The tension in the living room was palpable as I entered. My father sat in his usual armchair, barely acknowledging my presence. Lily sprawled on the couch, her pregnancy now visibly showing. Thomas stood by the window, and Kyle lurked near the hallway, avoiding eye contact. "Hello, everyone," I said, refusing to be intimidated. "We were just discussing names for the baby," Lily announced, one hand protectively over her belly. "Before you arrived." The implication was clear. Life had been proceeding normally until I'd disrupted everything. "That's nice," I said neutrally. "Any favorites?" "We're considering Eleanor for a girl," she replied. "After Grandma." The transparent attempt to remind me of family ties might have worked a week ago. Now, it just seemed manipulative. "Grandma would have liked that," I said simply. My mother disappeared into the kitchen, then called out that dinner was ready. We filed into the dining room, taking our usual seats around the table that had been the setting for so many tense family meals over the years. We ate in uncomfortable silence for several minutes before my father finally spoke. "I spoke with Gerald Morris today," he said, naming a lawyer friend of his. "He believes we have grounds to contest the will on the basis of undue influence." I set down my fork. "There was no undue influence, Dad. Grandma made her own decisions." "You spent more time with her than any of us in her final years," he countered. "You had ample opportunity to manipulate her thinking. Is that what you really believe? That I manipulated my own grandmother? Or are you just angry that she saw through the family dynamics and made her own choice?" My father's face reddened. "This isn't about family dynamics. This is about what's right. I was her only child. Her estate should have passed to me." "Why?" I challenged. "Because that's tradition? Grandma never cared much for traditions that didn't make sense." "It's not just tradition," my mother interjected. "It's about family needs. Your father is approaching retirement. Lily is starting a family. You're young. You have your whole career ahead of you. And Grandma wanted to make sure I could pursue that career without the financial struggles I've already been dealing with. She saw how this family prioritized everyone but me." "That's ridiculous," my father snapped. "We've always supported you." "How exactly? You paid for everyone else's education but told me to apply for scholarships. You came to Lily's art shows and the boys' sports games but missed my science competitions. You skipped my graduation for a baby shower that could have been scheduled any other day." "We've been over this," Lily said with exaggerated patience. "The shower was planned as a surprise. We couldn't control the timing." "You could have declined," I pointed out. "You could have said, 'Sorry, but my sister is graduating that day.' But none of you did. Because once again, I wasn't the priority." "You're making this all about you," Thomas accused. "No, I'm making Grandma's decision about what she intended, to support my research and to acknowledge that I've been treated differently in this family." "So you admit this is some kind of revenge?" my father asked. I shook my head. "It's not revenge. It's justice. It's Grandma recognizing something none of you ever would. And I'm honoring her wishes." "Even if it tears this family apart?" my mother asked, tears welling in her eyes. "The family was already divided," I said quietly. "I was always on the outside. The difference now is that I've stopped pretending otherwise." Kyle, who had been silent until now, suddenly spoke up. "She's right." All heads turned toward him in surprise. "Jess has always been treated differently," he continued. "We all know it. Dad paid off my gambling debts 3 times, but Jess had to work through college. Lily got a fully funded wedding, Thomas got his MBA paid for, and I got bailed out repeatedly. What did Jess ever get?" I stared at my brother, astonished by his support after our conversation yesterday. "That's not fair, Kyle," my father began. "No, it's not fair," Kyle agreed. "That's exactly the point. None of this has been fair to Jess. Grandma saw it, and now she's trying to balance the scales." My father's face darkened with anger. "So you're taking her side now? After everything we've done for you?" "I'm just telling the truth," Kyle said with a shrug. "Contest the will if you want, Dad. But you know Grandma was perfectly sane when she made her decision. You're just angry because she called you out on your favoritism." An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. My mother looked stricken, my father furious. Lily stared at her plate, while Thomas shifted awkwardly in his chair. "I think we're done here," my father finally said, throwing his napkin on the table. "Jessica, if you insist on keeping your grandmother's money for yourself, don't expect to remain welcome in this house." I'd expected the ultimatum, but it still hurt to hear it spoken aloud. "If that's your choice, Dad, I'll respect it. But know that my door will always be open if you ever want to truly understand why Grandma made the decision she did." I stood to leave, but my mother caught my arm. "Jessica, please, don't leave like this. We can work something out." "I've tried to work things out my whole life, Mom. I've compromised, accepted less, made excuses for why my achievements weren't celebrated the way my siblings were. I'm done compromising. Kyle followed me to the door. I kept my end of the deal, he said quietly. Your turn. I'll talk to the financial advisor tomorrow, I promised. Send me the details about your creditors. He nodded. For what it's worth, I am sorry about missing your graduation, and I'm proud of you. You're the only one of us who's actually done something meaningful with your life. The compliment, awkward, but seemingly genuine, caught me off guard. Thanks, Kyle. As I drove back to my grandmother's house, really allowing myself to think of it as my house now, I felt strangely peaceful. The confrontation I'd been dreading was over. My father had made his position clear, and I'd stood my ground. Whatever came next, I'd face it on my own terms. When I arrived home, I found an email from Westlake Pharmaceuticals requesting a meeting to discuss my research. Professor Walsh had made the introduction as promised. Another email came from a lawyer my grandmother had apparently arranged before her death, offering assistance with setting up the foundation I'd been considering. Even from beyond the grave, she was still supporting me, still believing in me when my own parents couldn't or wouldn't. For the first time since receiving my inheritance, I cried, not from hurt or anger, but from gratitude for the one person who had truly seen me. 6 months later, I stood at the podium in the university's main lecture hall, looking out at the assembled crowd. The sign behind me read, "The Eleanor Reynolds Foundation for Women in Science, Inaugural Grant Awards." In the front row sat Professor Walsh, beaming with pride. Beside her were several colleagues from the biochemistry department and executives from Westlake Pharmaceuticals, which had agreed to partner with my foundation and provide lab space for grant recipients. My research was progressing well under the new partnership. Free from financial constraints, I'd been able to expand my team and accelerate our work on targeted cancer therapies. Preliminary results were promising enough that we were preparing for the first phase of clinical trials. But today wasn't about my research. It was about fulfilling the vision my grandmother had inspired, creating opportunities for other young women facing barriers to their scientific careers. My grandmother Eleanor believed that brilliance and determination should never be held back by financial circumstances or lack of family support. I began. Today, we honor her legacy by awarding the first round of grants to 5 exceptional women who are pursuing groundbreaking research in their fields. As I introduced each recipient, I remembered my own struggles, the late nights working to pay rent while trying to study, the lonely achievements, the persistent feeling that I had to work twice as hard for half the recognition. These young women wouldn't have to face those same barriers. The grants provided not just funding, but mentorship, lab resources, and a supportive community of fellow scientists. After the ceremony, as guests mingled at the reception, I noticed a familiar figure hovering near the entrance. Thomas. I approached him cautiously. We hadn't spoken since the disastrous family dinner months ago. "I didn't expect to see you here," I said. He looked uncomfortable in his business suit, out of place among the academics. "I saw the announcement in the alumni newsletter. I thought, I wanted to see what you were doing with the money." "What did you think I'd be doing? Buying a yacht?" He had the grace to look embarrassed. "I don't know. Dad's been saying all kinds of things." "And now that you've seen for yourself," Thomas gestured around the room. It's impressive, Jess. Grandma would have loved it." "She inspired it," I said simply. He nodded, then hesitated before adding, "Lily had the baby last month. A girl. They did name her Eleanor." "That's nice," I said, meaning it despite everything. "Congratulations on becoming an uncle." "Thanks." He shifted awkwardly. "Look, Dad's still furious. He's dropped the idea of contesting the will, but he's stubborn. I remember. Mom asks about you, though. I think she misses you." I felt a pang of sadness. My mother had always been caught between my father's rigid expectations and her children's needs. "She knows where to find me. My door is still open. And Kyle's doing better," Thomas continued. "He's been going to those meetings. 6 months clean from gambling. Says he owes you." This was welcome news. "I'm glad to hear it." An awkward silence fell between us. We were strangers in many ways, connected by blood, but separated by years of different treatment and expectations. Would you... Thomas began, then started again. Would you like to meet your niece sometime? Not at Mom and Dad's. Maybe at Lily's place, or somewhere neutral. The invitation surprised me. I'd like that, I said cautiously. He nodded, relieved. I'll set it up. And Jess? I'm sorry about your graduation. I should have been there. Yes, you should have, I agreed, not letting him off the hook entirely. But maybe we can all do better going forward. After Thomas left, Professor Walsh joined me. Was that your brother? Yes. Apparently there's a new niece I might get to meet. A small step toward reconciliation? Maybe, I said. Or maybe just acknowledgement that we're still family, even if we're not close. She smiled. Your grandmother would be proud of everything you've accomplished, not just the research and the foundation, but standing up for yourself too. I wish she could have seen it. I think she knew exactly how it would play out, Professor Walsh said. She saw your strength even when you didn't see it yourself. Later that evening, I sat on the porch swing of my house, my home now, truly, watching the sunset over the ocean. The garden had been restored to its former glory with my grandmother's old gardening journals as guides. Inside, the rooms had been refreshed, but maintained their historic character, just as she would have wanted. On the table beside me lay the latest results from our lab work, promising data that suggested our treatment approach might be effective against multiple types of cancer. Lives might someday be saved because of research my grandmother had made possible. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Thinking of you today. The foundation ceremony looked wonderful in the photos Thomas showed me. Your grandmother would be so proud. It wasn't a full reconciliation, but it was a start. Perhaps in time, the wounds would heal enough for a new kind of relationship, one based on mutual respect rather than expectations. I touched the locket around my neck, which contained a small photo of my grandmother. Thank you, I whispered to her memory, for believing in me when no one else did, for seeing who I could become. Sometimes the greatest gift isn't money or property, but someone who truly sees you, your potential, your worth, your unique gifts. My grandmother had given me that gift throughout my life, and now, through her final act of faith in me, she'd given me the freedom to become the person she'd always known I could be. My family had skipped my graduation, but in doing so, they'd set in motion events that would change all our lives forever. And the letter I'd received that day had been more than an inheritance. It had been permission to finally value myself as much as my grandmother had valued me all along.